And welcome back to the drawing room. That's right, it's the drawing room, not the drawing board, as I've been saying like the last couple of episodes. And I'm just too lazy to edit it out because if I edit all that stuff out, it takes a million years to get you these podcasts. And I'm trying to be better about getting podcasts to you, on time at a decent clip. So fortunately, though, this time I remembered the name of my own podcast. It's the Drawing Room. Not board, room. And I'm here with Kip Carbone.
Board. You almost said board.
Yeah, I know. And I'm here with Kip Carbone. How you doing,
Hello.
Kip?
I'm doing great.
All right, and you are, of course, in good old rainy Seattle. It's actually raining quite a lot here in West Lafayette, Indiana. It's been coming down real good all day. It's actually unseasonably cold today. It's been very hot, but not today. It's been pretty hot the last 10, 15 days. But today it got into the low 50s, maybe upper 40s, and we actually had to turn the old fireplace on today.
Really?
So
it's almost summer. You can't use a fireplace in summer.
I know, it's like late May. That's crazy. But it's just
global warming. I mean,
yeah, I know. So what's going on with that? So yeah, so that's just a brief respite from the summer heat. And so, yeah, I am probably sounding to all of you maybe just slightly less high quality, and it's because I'm using my older CAD U37, which is a pretty decent USB microphone. I think it's the microphone you still use, in fact, Kip, right? The CAD U37.
Probably, yeah.
And so I'm using it because I'm actually in between computers right now. I'm using my sort of my Purdue work laptop for this because, okay, so I had my PC that's been my loyal trusty. I actually call, this is going to show how much of a dork I am, right? All of my PCs that I've had in my life since the early 2000s, it also shows you kind of how cheap I am and how long I make PCs last. I always named them after the first ship you see in Star Wars Episode 4, which is the first, Star Wars movie. Even though it's called Episode 4. Yes, I know, that's weird. There's that first ship that Princess Leia is on, the Tantive 4 is what it's called. So my PC in the early 2000s that I had when I didn't have it when I was in college. I was just finishing college. I had some old Dell that was giving up the ghost. And I bought I think it was another Dell, actually. And it was my first, real nice PC. Although I don't think I had a dedicated graphics card in it because I was sort of ignorant about those things back then. Again, I was like 21, 22. And I called that, because you have to give the computer a name for your home network or whatever. So I called it the Tantive 4, okay? So that was that computer, the Tantive 4. And that lasted from 2002 or 3 all the way until it finally kicked the bucket in 2009. So that lasted about 7 years, actually, which is ironic because the next computer is about 7 years too. So that was the Tantive 4. All right. And then, so fast forward to 2014, I believe it was, or maybe it was 2013. I'm trying to remember now. Was it 2014? Yes, 2014. Now, I had obviously, you're wondering, well, you couldn't have. You're a game developer. You couldn't have been using a 2002 PC that may not have had a graphics card in it, even to do all the stuff like I went to grad school for game dev. No, that's true. I didn't. I had a laptop that I got required in grad school. They made you buy it, and so that was sort of the thing I used. But I still had the Tantive 4 all the way up until I finished grad school. Then that one, sort of kicked the bucket. And I have a couple of, not to go total nerd out on all of you, but I had a couple of hard drives that I still carry around because there's data in them and I don't want to lose that data, but they're SCSI port hard drives. You just can't find, I'd have to go to some data archival place or something to even get at that data, right? It's not the usual SATA cord that most hard drives take. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. So, anyway, that was the Tantive 4, and then, I had this school laptop that I used, and then, finally, in 2014, I built a PC through Newegg, just bought the parts. That became the Tantive 5, so that was the Tantive 5, and that lasted, as it turns out, 7 years. In fact, it was starting probably from either a bad power supply or bad processor, because when you have a computer and it boots, but it doesn't beep at you, there's nothing on the monitor, but all the fans turn on. You get by the way, hello, Purdue laptop beeping. That's what that was. That little Windows chime that people are going to hear in the podcast. Because one of the things about using a Purdue computer is it has all these things that pop up on you all the time. So anyway, that was the Tantive 5 was this computer I built. And so I finally, this summer, I'm like, I have to get a new PC. I had been upgrading it. I put a new graphics card in it a couple of years ago. I got it up to 16 gigs RAM, which isn't that much these days, but back when I put that in there, it was a lot. Finally was getting to the point where student projects were actually starting to run bad on it, right? And that's kind of, for me, a bad thing because, even with COVID thankfully sort of ending, there's still a lot of work I do at home. Even before COVID, there's a lot of grading and stuff that I do at home. And so I have to be able to run these student games well. And let's be honest here. Student games, not going to be optimized. They're just not, right? They're going to be like, hey, the Unreal Engine can make 1,000.
Tell them kids to optimize, I say.
What they'll do, Kip, and you have a lot of experience in Unreal, so you can appreciate this. You know how you have the Unreal Terrain tool, and you have the foliage stuff that'll just generate like 1,000 trees, and probably each leaf is like 1 million polygons. Well, they'll just do that, right? They'll just generate 1 million trees, and they don't care, right? Like they're not trying to get it to run on a min-spec machine.
Texture unmixed.
That's right, yeah. And so, it was getting to the point where student projects were starting to run badly on it, and it was also time. And unfortunately, though, as I was just telling you in our pre-show chat, I was trying to get this thing, my old PC, the Tantive 5, kind of demoted, if you were, to sort of a family PC for the kids to use. And the day I was going to do that, it completely kicked the bucket. I mean, it just will not boot. But, I got my new computer in. But then like a bunch of other stuff happened this week, and I just couldn't, I have it out of the box at least, but it's not plugged in. And so, yeah, I'm on my Purdue laptop with my older USB microphone because I'm in the middle of setting up a new PC, which is really exciting. But I will say, as you get older, these things are less amazing to you. They lose a little bit of their sparkle. They become more like tools. Because I remember even when I built the Tantive 5, and of course I'm going to call this the Tantive 6. That's what it's going to be named. When I built the Tantive 4 or 5, it was just like, wow, this is awesome, right? Like this is, yeah, and I was over 30 years old then, but now at 40, I'm like, cool. I mean, I'm excited. I'm definitely still excited, but it's like, it's a tool that I need for my job, frankly. Like, and it's not just like, yeah, I'm going to get this and I'm going to run the latest Call of Duty at like 10,000 frames per second. Although I will say I'll probably try Cyberpunk on it since it'll be capable of running it well. Right. So, Kip, since we're talking about this, I know this is actually a little off topic in terms of the show notes. What's your current home PC build situation?
Ooh, I've got... I think I have a Ryzen 5.
That's what I have, actually.
Yeah, it was like the step up before you start to spend the big bucks on my own personal PC. I mean, obviously, like my work PC is now my home PC because I'm working from home. And now I've got a pretty sick setup. I've got a Ryzen 9. It's not a Threadripper. I've got actually the graphics card. It's nothing that great. It's like a 2080, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have 16 gigs of RAM in it, but then I have 64 megabytes of RAM in this. I had 64 in that Ryzen 5. The graphics card, but the only like neat thing is I have that built-in the NVMe drive. Is that right?
Yeah, is that like a hybrid solid state?
NVMe Express.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and those are pretty, like, that's like a must-have. Like, that is something, like you were saying, like, I'm not excited about drive. Like, that's something to get excited about, because, like, it's instantaneously almost reads data. It's way better than a solid state. It's phenomenal. Like, you got to get one of those. Like, I would never, like, I was sort of like the guy that bought went to, like, Tom's Hardware and was like, what's the one that's, like, the cheapest without breaking the bank and, like, but, like, it's not even really that expensive.
Yeah, I mean, what I ended up doing is, I will say right now, it is actually probably one of the worst times ever to buy a PC because
Yeah,
of
it's
just
even
the
worse than
cost.
the first Bitcoin mining
Yeah,
BS.
the cost of this stuff
Oh,
is, I mean, I feel like I have right now. I mean, I'm happy with it, of course, but like, of course, I haven't even run it yet, right? It's just still sitting there. But in terms of just the specs,
you
and
say that now. Wait till you buy
my
it.
my specs, by the way, in case people are wondering, they probably are, as we've talked this much about it. I have a Ryzen 5. I'm not going to be able to tell you, the exact Ryzen 5 CPU specs, but it was definitely kind of a solid middle of the road, and it beats some of the Intel i9s in the benchmarks. So
Yeah,
it's sort of like which is the world has changed because back in 2014 you would just never consider an AMD CPU.
yeah,
Maybe
never,
you
never.
might consider a Radeon graphics card, maybe, but as far as the CPUs go, like back in 2014, you just get laughed out of the room. Now it's sort of the opposite, where it's actually really hard to find a lot of the AMD CPUs. They're like hard to just even locate them in the market because they're so popular now. So the Ryzen 5 processor, and I have a NVIDIA 3070 is the graphics card.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that was an area where I was trying not to compromise hard because my experience is like the graphics card, especially for the things that we do in gaming, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And yeah, sure, I mean,
Yeah,
I end up doing. I do a lot more stuff now where the CPU matters in terms of even doing this podcast and doing Twitch streams and stuff. I mean, the CPU is gonna help you there a little bit more than the graphics card would, but nonetheless, the graphics card is still the most important thing when you're doing game dev stuff. And I have 32 gigs RAM now. And the thing that actually our friend Adam suggested that I do with this build is I do have a 4 gigabyte solid state drive, or a 4 terabyte solid state drive.
mm.
Which will be really nice. I had a solid state drive on the Tantive 5, and it was a pain though because I upgraded to it after the fact. It wasn't originally a solid state machine. I bought one and I actually ended up having to have like two different versions of two Windows boots on it. Two boot segments, like the old
Uh-huh.
one and then like the new one that's the solid state. So it'll be nice to not have to deal with that. To have like a clean all solid state machine. It's a HD Omen, so I didn't build this. This is a pre-built, so that's another difference. Like back in 2014, it was like, look, I was a little bit earlier in my career. Money is a little harder. Not to say that I have limitless cash now or anything, but like it was. I was gonna build it. Period. I was gonna save every cent I could. Now it's like I'm a little bit more like, well, time is money, and I don't. And I'm actually glad because look, I'm probably
You
not
don't
even.
really save anything anymore by building it as well.
Yeah,
Like you used to, and back in the day, you'd save, a good amount of money on it, but that's a diminishing return right now. So,
right. Yeah, I do agree. And to be honest, like I have had all week to set up a pre-built PC, and
uh,
I'm barely started. It's out of the box. The cords are out of the box. I have the monitor set up, but it's not even done. And I'm leaving for a little vacation tomorrow, so it's probably not going to get done until I get back next week. So we're just going to Tennessee. Um, so yeah, it's a good idea I didn't build my own, or else it'd probably take me the entire summer break from Purdue to get this done because I just don't do things like I did when I was younger, where I'd get a computer in the mail, I'd get the parts, and I would just be like, okay, I'm gonna pull an all nighter to do this because I can't wait. Now I'm
yeah.
like, I can wait. Like I'm just lazier about stuff, man. Like I'm actually more diligent about some things in my life. Like I'm way better at like certain things, but other things I'm like, no, I'm not gonna pull an all nighter to build a PC. I guess it's just priorities, I suppose. But I'm happy with it. So far, obviously, I do dig that the case it's got the clear glass case, which is nifty. Um,
Mm.
and I feel like, but just to get people the idea how much more expensive PCs are now, like, I felt like when I built my PC in 2014, it was sort of a middle of the road because that's what I could afford back then. Like, it had a NVIDIA 760, which was at that time a solid middle of the road card. It had an Intel i5, and it had 8 gigs of RAM back then. And it was like, I think with the monitors and stuff, it was like $1,200 or something. Including buying the monitors that I needed. And this build was like, okay, like it is better than the 2014 build was in terms of this is probably, it's definitely, and yes, that's the Windows beep again. Thanks for nothing, Purdue Computer. So like, I would say that this computer is the CPU is middle of the road. Because that's unfortunately, I mean, if I tried to get it advanced i9 or AMD, it would be over $3,000. Like the build, the builds that have the really crazy good CPUs are like $3,500, right? So that's just blows my budget out of the water. My budget was a lot higher than my 2014 computer, but the graphics card I don't think is middle of the road. I think from as far as I can understand, the graphics card is like a really good graphics card, and so I feel good about that. I feel like the RAM is these days 32 gigs. I'm not ready to say 32 gigs of RAM is standard. I still think 16 is probably the standard, so I'm doing well there. I'm definitely kicking butt on the SSD, on the 4 4 terabyte SSD drive. I think that was definitely a big step up. So I think it's sort of a middle. So, but in 2014, $1,200, solid middle of the road PC, like more than double that. And that's just the cost of the PC, and without even the monitors, is more than double that to get a PC that is a kind of a high middle to low advanced level of computer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's sort of at the higher end of mid-range. So better, but not like exponentially better. But the cost was so much more. So much more. And of course, remember, I'm trying to build a PC that will last another 7 years, right? Like that's the hope. So, and I think it will, but like, man, it was so much more expensive. I really felt that in the wallet, but it was time. It was definitely time. And hopefully the next podcast, I'll be able to talk about the, sort of my gaming experiences with this, but let's not blab. We've already been blabbing for like 15 minutes, actually 17 minutes, just about general nonsense. Let's get into today's topics a little bit. So what we're doing today, it is kind of a loose podcast. It's kind of a combination of what I'm playing, kind of what are you playing lately? And everyone always thinks when the podcast I listen to, everyone will always say, no one wants to hear a what are you playing podcast, but then they'll say, well, actually those do really well for us. So people do actually like to listen to those. So, we should never be afraid to do one of these. That's kind of what we're about to do here in a few seconds. But then we're going to talk a little bit. We had a really interesting conversation a few podcasts ago about low-carb dieting and health stuff, and we're both sort of doing our own thing there, and so we're going to have a discussion about that. So let's get started on the main topic. What are we playing now? What am I playing? Because I know, Kip, you're really busy with, you're not like me. You have a 9-to-5er job, right? And you have a family. Of course, I have a family too, but I'm off for the summer. That's I have this ridiculously privileged lifestyle now, and I'll tell you, I'm already feeling massively guilty about not being incredibly productive. I've been on summer break for almost 2 weeks, and I feel like I've failed already in being productive and good. And we're about to go on a vacation that I don't even feel like I deserve. But hey, the summer break's just started. Maybe hopefully I'll do better, but that's just, it's hard for me not to feel that way. But it means I have time to play. I've had time to play games. What have I been playing? Well, I've been playing.
What have you been playing?
PSP games, Kit. PSP.
Really?
PlayStation
the PSP
Portable.
Is one of the most underrated platforms there is. It certainly was I think that's my favorite platform to develop for, to tell you the truth. Because everything looks good on it. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about... I'm embarrassed to say, I think this is like my third PSP, which is what happens. They always say, mamas don't let your kids grow up to be cowboys, or whatever that saying is, that I'm probably misquoting horribly. I'll say, mamas don't let your kids sell their old game gear, no matter how financially desperate they might get. And that's really the real reason why I would sell this stuff, right? Because I needed the money. But, I've had PSPs before, and I've thought to sell them before. And that was a mistake, because the PSPs... We've
all done stuff we regret for money.
That's right. That's
Rob.
right. Sure. And that's... And
we can't talk about that on this podcast.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I was inspired to get the PSP again, mainly because there was something about it that I didn't know, and that is you can easily hook it up to a television. I had no idea. Actually, Grid
Mhm.
Snaps and now Drawing Room co-host Patrick introduced this to me. He brought over to my house one time a little. It's just a cable. It's so easy. It's just a cable that plugs into the PSP. It's a component cable, so most TVs still have a component input on them even now. And bam, it's just on the TV, and the PSP becomes the controller. It's so
Hmm.
eloquent and simple, unlike Nintendo handhelds, where there's usually like, if you remember the GameCube player, where it's like this big bulky piece of hardware that's snapped onto the bottom of the GameCube, and it had to have like
Yep.
software and all that. So really cool thing, because I really enjoy playing handheld games on a big screen. So that kind of put the idea in my head. Fortunately, you can still get PSPs fairly easily and fairly inexpensively as long as you buy Japanese ones. American PSPs in good condition are a little expensive, but the good news is there's no real difference that's worth mentioning between a Japanese and American PSP. In fact, they have way more colors than we got, so it's all a huge win, right? I would recommend to people when if you go on eBay to buy one, make sure to find one where they're at least giving you like a 4 GB memory stick, because that's another thing that's a pain about Sony handhelds is proprietary memory, of course. So a lot of them will come bundled with that, and you'll need at least 4 gigs if you plan to have like any software downloaded on it. And of course, very
Mhm.
famously, Sony has extended the life of the PSP and Vita stores at least for another couple of months. So if you have things digital, you'll want to get on that before they close those stores down. So another thing that inspired me, and this will lead to what games I've been playing, is back in way back in 2016, Kip. So this would have been when you and I were just getting to know each other at our previous employer, right? We were both brand
Mhm.
new employees there, and I wanted to get myself a birthday gift, and I went and got a PlayStation TV, which I'm really glad I got because they're like really expensive now. They're like really like hard to find. And back in
Mhm.
2016, they were blowing them out clearance, and it was a cool birthday gift. And so I went and I bought Castlevania on the online store. I bought Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles. Kip asked me, "What is the Dracula X Chronicles?"
What is the Dracula X
Well,
Chronicles?
I'm glad you asked that, Kip. Yes, that is a awesome remake of Castlevania Dracula X, aka Rondo of Blood, which was a TurboGrafx CD game that never got
Mhm.
released in America. That up until that PSP remake, you had to spend hundreds of dollars to import. Like even in the 1990s, it was that rare, and it's considered like by most people like the second greatest Castlevania game after Symphony of the Night. Some people would even say it's better than Symphony of the Night because they prefer it stylistically. And even though the Dracula X Chronicles is like a 2.5D remake, you can unlock the original. So for a
Mhm.
while, it was like the only way you can get that game. But now you can actually download it now on a PS4 now, the Dracula X Rondo of Blood or whatever. But the actual 2.5D remake is actually quite good. And also, you can unlock Symphony of the Night on there for good measure, right? So it's a really good collection of stuff. I bought this because you could buy it on the PlayStation TV, which for people that don't know, it's basically just a Vita that hooks up to a television. And here's the thing they don't tell you though. The developer has to change a few lines of code to get it to work on a Vita, like these old PSP games. And Konami was not interested in doing that for Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, but you could still buy it in the shop. They don't tell you this. So I spend this $30 to buy this, and I can't run it. I can't run it on my PlayStation TV. And so I'm like annoyed because this is a cool game, right? So finally, a few weeks ago, when I get the PSP, I have to go through this ridiculous process though, right? Because I don't want to rebuy it or even re download it. What I do is I download the Dracula X Chronicles on my PS3 that I already bought, right? You can do that. You can download it. And then I hooked up the PSP to the PS3 and then copied it from the PS3 to the PSP. Why did I do that? And I have to give credit to show co host Patrick for this. Because the shops are closing down, the PSP and Vita shops, right?
Mhm.
You shouldn't just download it directly to the PSP because if something happens to your PSP, it gets corrupted, you get stepped on or whatever, it's gone forever once those shops close. But if you download it to the PS3 first, that serves as a backup because the PS3 it's just a hard drive in there. I can hook it up to my computer. I can download it from, you know what I mean? It gives you a better backup, so that's why I did that. So I'm finally playing Dracula X Chronicles. It's really good. It really controls tightly for a 2.5D game, which is a problem with a lot of them. Floaty controls. Definitely not the case here. I'm also playing Metal Gear Portable Ops, which is a game that I played a little bit of back in the day and just sort of gave up on. I gave up on it mainly because I didn't like the way it did troop extraction. You know, Kip, when you play Metal Gear 5, how you have the Fulton extraction device, right?
Yep.
Well, and this was the earliest attempt that Konami made to basically do this thing where you're capturing soldiers and they fight for you, but there was no Fulton extraction. You had to drag them to your truck. And I remember that pissing me off. And so I kind of gave up on it when I had an original PSP. So I've always kind of wanted to go back because it's got some cool story stuff. It is really good, kind of classic Metal Gear gameplay, kind of more like Metal Gear Solid 3 type gameplay, I would say. But in really short, portable, bite-sized things. And they try to address how much of a pain it is to drag soldiers around by the fact that you don't have to drag them to the truck. You can actually, as you build up your team, they're going to be hiding in various places in the level, and you can drag it to one of your teammates, so you don't have to go all the way back to the truck or whatever. And so part of my frustration is I never really learned the game mechanics carefully. That said, I mean, the Fulton extraction is like a lot better, right? I mean, that's obviously a much better way to do it, but it was their first crack at it, right? So it's interesting to go back and kind of see the birth of what would become like one of the main Metal Gear mechanics, the recruitment of other soldiers. So really interesting game. I have a few others that I'm hopefully going to get to fire up during my little vacation because I'll be taking my PSP with me. I have Metal Gear Acid, which is a Metal Gear game that you play as a card game, which I remember playing a lot of the first time I owned a PSP. And Patapon, that puzzle game, because it was super cheap at the retro game store. So I am also playing Resident Evil Village. And I think it's fantastic, Kip. I think it's an early game of the year contender. I think that anyone that's really into old school, and when I mean old school, I mean handcrafted entertainment. I mean, the way games used to be made, that is to say, properly. Right?
Yep.
Where it's not based on kind of this sort of bastardization of RPG mechanics. Where it's really just made to be a content treadmill to get you to buy stuff, which is, so many games, games are made with that perspective, right? And it's fine. Yep. I get it. I've played some of those games. Some of them are okay, right? Some of them are even good, but it's so amazing to play a game where every square inch of it has been handcrafted to give you, the player, a special experience. They're not thinking about, well, geez, I want to make sure that this is at least a tiny bit entertaining for 10,000 iterations, right? Which is the problem with modern game design is so much of it is like, hey, players are going to be doing this 10,000 times so they can earn the next, widget. And so we need to make things sort of always mildly entertaining, but never massively entertaining, right? At least that's how it feels to me. Versus something like this where, okay, yes, you do backtrack. There is some Metroidvania, hub and spoke type level design. Visit that podcast. We did a podcast on that. But for the most part, it is very much a game where you can tell it is level designers, it's environment artists, it's programmers handcrafting the moment to moment, right? They don't care about the 1,000th hour of gameplay, right? They care about the 20 hours of gameplay or whatever it is. I'm maybe 2/3 of the way through the campaign, and so maybe I've put like 12, 15 hours in it or something. I'm not sure. They care about the 20 or 30 hours that they want to give you. They care about that being an awesome experience. They don't care about giving you 1,000 hours. Now they have another mode. I mean, they have like kind of a side mode that is that if you want that later. But like the main part of the game is just wonderful, handcrafted, just wonderful level design, manipulating your emotions, your fear. It's scary, but it's not like Resident Evil 7, which in my opinion was actually more scary than fun. I think this is a much better balance between Resident Evil 4 style action and exploration with terror. I mean, there's some. Don't let people say. People say this game isn't that scary. They are lying. There are some moments in this game that made me want to curl up in the fetal position and cry, right? And be like, I don't want to play this again. Seriously, there are some moments that where I about piss myself. Okay, like this
Really?
game is scary. But there's moments where it is just exploration and action as well. So it's balanced, right? Like for every massively scary, I don't know if I can keep playing this kind of thing. There's a good stretch, so it's a better balance in my
Is the
opinion.
previous Metal Gear? Is the previous Resident Evil that scary? Is it like that
Yes, I would
terrifying?
say Resident Evil 7. Now,
Uh,
look, everyone's a little different, right? I mean, there are some people that, you put them on a roller coaster and they're just like, this is the dumbest thing, whatever, right? Like, I know I'm not in any danger. Mathematically, I'm not in any danger.
uh-huh.
I don't care, right? Probably their adrenal glands don't function properly, whatever it is that make them like this. And then there's people like me that actually thought when I was still dating my wife and we went to Cedar Point in Ohio, that like we went on the Tower of Power there, which I think they still have, I think. And it's just basically one of those rides that takes you way up and then just like drops you down. So it's not really a roller coaster, but it's just a kind of we're gonna take you really high up and then you go way down and you feel the weightlessness of that. I actually thought I was going to die on the way down. I remember having that thought that like it doesn't matter that everyone else is having a good time here for that like zero point 0.5 seconds on the way down. I thought my heart is going to explode and I'm going to die. And I remember finishing the ride and I remember telling Erica at the time, I remember saying like I don't ever want to do this again. Like she loves roller coasters, so that was like a huge, massive disappointment for her. I think.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm just like Cedar Point has an awesome arcade. I'm gonna go there and spend the next 30 years. I don't want to be, So I will admit I am somewhat more susceptible to being scared than perhaps other people. But with that caveat, yes, Resident Evil 7 is utterly mind-blowingly terrifying and there's no relenting
Mhm.
of it. It doesn't ever kind of step off the gas. Now part of it is its game design is based on there's a whole class of survival horror games that got popular on Steam. These were kind of low budget smaller games. Amnesia, I think there's one called Penumbra that's maybe one of the first ones like this. Outlast, uh, when we made Lost Within at Human Head, we were influenced by those, although our game came out a little bit different. It came out more like a psychological drama, I think, than horror. But we were looking at those games, and one thing those games all have in common from the game design perspective is it's all about playing as a helpless character and avoiding monsters that will kill you almost instantly all the time, right?
Mhm.
And that's what Resident Evil 7 is like, and that's what makes it different than Resident Evil 4 and 5 and Revelations and its sequel is.
Yeah, that's
And
the one thing I liked about four the most, that you didn't feel like helpless.
well, yeah, because you're playing Leon Kennedy in 4 and you're a Secret Service agent, you're badass, right? And yes,
Yeah.
you're in danger. I mean, the chainsaw guy will kill you very quickly and all of that, but you're also pretty awesome too, right? And you can
Mhm.
hang, right? Same thing when you're playing as Chris Redfield in 5 or any of the other characters. You're all like elite warriors at that point. Whereas what they did in Resident Evil 7, you're Ethan Winters, who's just a dude. I mean, he's just a guy, right? And I will say they do a really good job at that, presenting him like the way they do the sound design, the fact that it's in first person, but they put in his breath. Like every time there's like a tense situation, you hear the breathing. And even the way he talks and comments about things. Actually, I'm going to share an amazing anecdote. This is actually one of my favorite gamer moments that I've had in like a couple of years, actually. So I was fighting, I won't say which boss it is, I don't want to spoil anything, but like I was fighting a boss in the game, a significant boss. And, I was struggling, it was taking me a few attempts or whatever. This was probably on like the third attempt, I think. And everyone in my family was watching this except for, my youngest Lucy, who's like 7, right? So, way too young to witness this. But like my 13-year-old was there because she really likes horror movies actually, and she's been kind of She's kind of shown some interest and watched me play a bit. And then of course Erica loves watching me play any Resident Evil game, right? So
Mhm.
so we're all down there watching me fight this boss, and I'm like fighting it and fighting it and fighting it, and I finally win. And because this is I don't like having to put the explicit language tag on this. I'll just say I just said the S word, right? So not anything horrible, but
Uh,
I said eat S word, right? Like I said that like out loud, like really loud, just in a celebratory way when I killed this boss, and then one beat later, Ethan Winters says exactly the same thing.
really?
Yes, he says the same thing. And everyone in the room just started laughing. It was hilarious. But that just goes to show, though. I mean, they really crafted that character to react like a normal person would in these situations. So.
Mhm.
But yeah, Resident Evil 7, terrifying. Not that fun, in my opinion. This game, much better balance. Highly, highly recommend it. Quite a bit. It's really not to be missed, I think. And it runs great on a PS4. Don't worry about that. It's not one of those things where it's like, it's not like Cyberpunk where if you're trying to play on a PS4, it's just like a terrible experience. No, I mean, that Resident Evil engine, which is the same engine that Monster Hunter Rise uses, incidentally, on the Switch, it's runs like butter. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of frame loss. The frame rate is smooth on PS4 even. So there's really no wrong way to go. Play it on PC, play it on PS5, whatever you have that will run it. Great, great, great experience. So I'm going to talk about one more game real fast, and then we'll transition to the next part of our show here. So I just wanted to mention briefly that I am playing also Yakuza 7, which is also known as Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is the latest kind of main Yakuza game. And the big change, well, there's a bunch of big changes here. One is, of course, you're not playing as Kazuma Kiryu anymore. That character's retired. You're playing as Kasuga Ichiban. And, of course, for those that have a little bit of Japanese knowledge, Ichiban, a.k.a. number one. That's what that is. So that there's lots of puns on that throughout the game. The fact that he's literally named number one as a character. And what's kind of interesting is the character is like a massive fan of Japanese RPGs and was as a kid. And so to reflect this, the game is structured like an RPG. So it's no longer kind of a Streets of Rage, but in 3D, beat 'em up sort of brawler. It's a turn-based RPG. But what's strange about it is it doesn't actually feel as different as you would think. It feels like a Yakuza game. Like the combat, even though you're taking turns, it feels very surprisingly similar. It's just that instead of mashing the square button to do like a combo, you're just selecting from a menu, right? And you do it from there. So it keeps the same feel, I think, quite impressively, whilst making things a bit different. It has, like all the Yakuza games, an incredible mini game that will just devour your time. I've spent the last week playing the business management mini game. There's a situation where you get in where you run a business, actually a senbei shop. Senbei is rice crackers basically, and you build it into like a huge business empire, like almost like a Jeff Bezos like massive business empire. And it's this incredible mini game that's just like could almost stand alone totally, right? And simple but like crazy addictive. And I don't even like sim games that much like that. It's just they do such a good job with those mini games, and most of the Yakuza games have at least one like that will just you'll just stop playing the main story for a couple of weeks to do that. I think Yakuza 0, the one that you've played, it has a real estate management game that's very similar. That will like absorb weeks of your time. And actually, strangely enough, those two games do have something in common. In the Yakuza 0 real estate game, they have a chicken real estate agent that you hire. And in the business management game, you also have a chicken named Omelet that is part of your team. Anyway, that is what I'm playing. So, Kip, let's transition to the next kind of topic here. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we do that?
I think I'm gonna play. I think I'm gonna buy it tonight. And just Metal Slug 3 on the PlayStation Store. Just play that.
Oh, nice, good choice. Yeah, classic, utterly classic.
Just a couple bucks. I think it's like $4, but I'm just gonna play something. I gotta play something.
Well, you
I gotta
really
play
can't
something
go
innocuous.
Wrong. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that beautiful 2D art. You really can't. It's those games are they play great too, but they look incredible. I recently played a few years ago one of the Metal Slugs co-op with one of my friends, and just like the variety in those levels and the variety in that gameplay, especially for the type of game it is, very, very cool. All right, so let's transition to health. We had this fascinating podcast about our low carb diet choices or whatever. So first of all, I just wanted to update. So I've been doing well on it still. My weight is slowly, very slowly going down, but it is still going down, and I'm hitting all kinds of non-scale victories too. Right, ages ago, I bought like the first new belt I had to buy in like 10 years.
Nice.
Because I got through every hole punch on the belt. I would have had to have added more holes. So this belt was just like, it just wasn't going to work anymore as a belt, right? So I bought another belt, and I got a little bit too ambitious with the size of the belt, and so it only fit on the very first hole, and it was tight, like even to the point of being a little uncomfortable. This might have been like 6 months ago or something. But then I just got over it, whatever. And then you know how belts are, right? That hole gets a little stretchy, right? And that almost gives you a little. Well, last couple of weeks, I've noticed, hey, not only does that first, belt hole, not only is it loose, but I can go to the second one now quite easily now. So that's obviously a huge, and that's like a new, much smaller belt as it is. I have hit like new lows in weight and everything. It's been much, much slower, but it's still going down. So this is all good. All good. The jogging's been good. All that's been good. So Kip, how about yourself? How have you been doing?
I think I mentioned this to the group, but not on the show. But I've been tinkering with my metabolism to try to rev it up.
Interesting.
So I've been. We've obviously talked a lot about diets, and I've been dieting like crazy for, I guess I'm pushing for, so maybe like 20 years of low calorie dieting and doing this and doing, in stages, sometimes you get out of it and whatever. And, I've recently in the last like 3 years, I've really been serious about it. And working out, like seriously working out, not like, I go to the gym every, like real serious working out. And so, but my metabolism is still pretty slow. So I've been reading a lot of stuff about ways to increase your metabolism. Like still my kind of basal metabolic rate has been super low, I think. Like it's far lower than it should be. So I have a plan to kind of get it like revved up in hopes to kind of burn more fat and kind of make it a lot easier, to maintain weight as well and to like reduce weight. And so if I do cut my calories, I don't need to cut them as severely, and I'll get hopefully better results. And then hopefully it's just easier I'll get more gains. I'll kind of get the better of everything. It's sort of a reverse diet. I've been supplementing a lot to boost my thyroid and my T3 and my T4 production, and then which I guess we'll get in a little bit about that biohacking. There's always like so-and-so PhD guy at something that's like, take this supplement and do this thing, and this is how to rev your metabolism. But like, how much do these people really, like, what do these people really do? Like, what is their, right. I mean, we see a lot inundated, it'll come up on your YouTube algorithms of like, this podcast, oh geez, you've been living your life the wrong way your entire life. Read this thing and it's going to revolutionize, just like 2 hours investment on me pushing ads for whatever sponsors of the show, which we don't do on this podcast.
Heck no, because no one's paying us. But
no one's paying us anything.
Right.
I guess I should beat around, just get to the straight points of like, okay, well, I've listened to all these stupid podcasts and I've digested it all down, and I figured out the formula how you could eat more calories in a day. Well, should I go into this more? I guess. Why not?
You should, but let me give you just a quick note. I think your mic is distorting a little bit.
It is? Okay. Yeah. Am I screaming?
You're probably just a little hot.
Okay, let me turn off one thing real quick. Hold on 1 second.
All right, so this break brought to you by absolutely nobody, because we have no sponsors whatsoever. But I have to fill the time because I don't want to go back and edit this. So I guess this break is going to be brought to you by, fictitiously, the HP Omen line of computers, because that's the computer that I just purchased and I'm waiting to set up, hopefully very, very soon. So go to Amazon and buy them, I guess, if you want a nice computer. I can't even vouch for it, so it's not even a real ad. But that's what I'm going to fill this time. Okay, cool. You're back.
How does this sound? Okay, back. All right, I had a fan going on in the background, which I probably should have turned off earlier in the podcast, but Does this sound better? Okay, so anyway, we've listened to all these stupid, whatever podcasts from PhD so and so, whatever. I'm just a real guy that lives in the real world, that likes to tinker with stuff and order supplements off of Amazon and get it delivered overnight. Because I have an Amazon Prime membership I steal from my parents. So basically, what I think is going on. So I think I have sort of like not technically hypothyroidism, but it's like in the like pre-hype. I think it's not optimized, right? So what I found out is probably it could be related to gallbladder issues. And so I'm taking things to kind of soup up my gallbladder and soup up my liver, which will in turn soup up your thyroid itself. And I'm taking kind of like all the supplements that could help with that. Like bile salts is a big one. There's a couple supplements that have it. You could just get bile salts and try that yourself. Selenium, C iodine, and then magnesium, zinc. What the heck else am I taking? I take a bunch of different stuff.
Always scan this
I'm
section.
taking a lot of China. I went to a Chinese herbalist, a Chinese medicine, and then I'm taking supplements to kind of aid my liver, and then I'm going to go on supplements to kind of boost my vitality and my vigor and my yang energy, and that coincides with the summer months, which is a good time to do it, which is more of like fiery and hot and burning. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm also with that as well. I've slowly increased my calories because being at a caloric deficit, your body is kind of in a state of like, well, calories are hard to come by, so I'm going to slow your metabolism down because you're just not getting it. And if you diet for a long time and you kind of hit a plateau and you've been very fastidious, you've been like extremely rigid on your diet and you've really been very good with it and you just aren't getting results. Usually it's because your metabolism is adapted to it, and no one really, everyone equates that to just like lazy dieter, like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, or, you're eating too much, you're eating candy bars, when you shouldn't be, or something like that. And it's really not. Especially if you've dieted a whole lot in your life, your metabolism adapts very quickly to it. It becomes very efficient, which it's not good. Like you really want to have an inefficient, like really a metabolism that burns a lot of stuff, a lot faster than it should, and then you can eat a lot more. Or not like, okay, I'm going to go eat cake with every meal or something, but you don't have to eat like you're a female bikini model and you're a man in their 40s. You could eat regular sized portions of food and not gain weight, or if you do a calorie reduction, then you can get like significantly better results as well. And that's what my goal is. That's what I've been tinkering with.
Boy, that's really awesome. I'm excited to see what results you might get from that, because that's really like a huge thing. Really, yeah. It is. And by the way, let me just mention, this entire podcast, this stupid laptop has been making all sort of notification sounds that are going to appear, and I was trying to turn that off. Right.
I haven't heard any.
You're not going to hear it on your end due to the way Windows Audio works, but it will be in the podcast, unfortunately. So, again, I apologize for that. I mentioned that because in the middle of Kip's fascinating explanation of this, I was trying to turn it off, and it actually caused a robo voice to play saying something. It didn't like completely steamroll you or anything, but I'm just sort of apologizing to our listeners. It's funny how we've been podcasting for 3 years, and it's gotten less professional, not more.
Good.
That's right.
I'm glad.
Yeah, that's right. Kip likes low production values, but it's mainly because I don't really have a proper setup right now, as I'm in the middle of setting up what will be my main computer. So anyway, getting back to topic though, yeah, absolutely. Like this is a problem. I remember when I started low carbing in 2018, my basal metabolic rate was probably about 2,500 calories, which is a pretty standard for like a 6'1" dude. Especially one that was, packing on some, pounds, what I'm saying, like some heat, bringing it a little large, and so, in fact, that's probably not even that high for someone that was, pretty, significantly obese at that height. But it was high enough that when I got started, that's one of the reasons why it's always easy at the start, right? I mean, I think I lost my first 20 pounds like relatively quickly.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say it was easy because it took forever to find the right kind of formula. And go listen to that previous podcast. We talk about all that, like kind of how we did all our things. But I'm not going to go into that again, other than just to say that it's been very noticeable, like in about 10 or 20 pound increments of weight loss. You do note, like, wow, okay, I have to work a lot harder at this. And so at some point, 2,500 became 2,300. It doesn't seem like a lot, but probably what was happening when I was eating low carb, I went from, I don't know, on the standard American diet, I'd probably eat somewhere between 25 and 2,800 calories a day without even realizing it, right? You just end up doing that. You go to low carb, and without even really trying to do any tinkering other than just following the stuff in the Atkins book, I mean, you drop down to 22, 2,300. You just drop down to a lower calorie amount without even really trying to. And that's enough. When my metabolism was burning 25, 2,600 calories per day, that was
Mhm.
enough, right? Because, we were walking at noon and stuff too. So, all our lunchtime walks and all that was adding a little bit more to that and all that. But then once it dropped to 23, okay, it's a little harder. And then sometime when I got around to the 40, 45 pounds lost area, and I've lost over 50 pounds now, and I'm actually closing in on 60.
Wow.
It's I'm now down around 2,100, probably now closer to 2,000. For a 6 foot 1 inch man.
Yeah.
Obviously this is supposed to happen. There's literally less of me for my body to fuel, right? So it's not surprising, but it does, boy, it really does make things more challenging. Now, my response to that is to do something that Dr. Ted Nyman, who I really like, and go track down podcasts that he's on. He doesn't have his own podcast, I think, but he's often a guest on lots of people's podcasts. He's the one that's really taught me to like really hammer on the protein. That would be his answer to this problem. Whether or not it's the best answer, I don't know. But his whole shtick is like, look, you got to eat the stuff that is going to be like most satiating per calorie, right? And so when you eat a lot of protein, that stuff is really filling per calorie, causes the energy to protein ratio of foods. And so that's what I've been doing, particularly when I want to put the foot on the gas. I mean, it's really hard actually to eat 50% of your calories as protein. It's actually quite challenging.
Mhm.
So you kind of have to like pick your battles. I think most people that do low carb and don't think about it, they probably end up at around 16%, 15% of their calories being protein and a lot of it being fat or whatever. And the problem with that is I do believe again, I'm not a scientist, but it just feels intuitive to me that we all need protein because our bodies cannot synthesize it naturally. We have to get it externally. And if you're getting really low amounts of it, your body's going to make you want to eat more to get it. At least so goes the theory, right? What I notice
Mhm.
for me is if I eat closer to like 30, 40%, doesn't have to be as high as 50%. Once I get over 25%, I would say, all of a
Mhm.
sudden the problems I have with hunger go away. Like because what often will happen to me is, okay, I'm at like 1,700 calories, which means for me that's it, that's good, I'm done for the day. If I'm eating like a typical like ketogenic low carb where I'm like only getting 15% protein, I will wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning so hungry that I want to eat everything in my house.
Mhm.
And that's hard. But if I end the day at 1,700 calories and about 30% of it is protein, that doesn't happen. It just does not happen, right? It is definitely effective. Now, that's not the same as what you're doing because I'm not actually jacking up my metabolism. I'm just finding ways to work within, the
Oh,
lowered metabolism, right? Where you're actually trying
yeah.
to raise it up. So, which I think is a really cool idea. And I hope you're successful because, of course, who wouldn't want to be able to eat a little bit more, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess my weight is maintained. Like I've not gained any weight, and I've increased. So my calories, I was eating like 1,850 calories. That's like my basal metabolic rate, which it's like that's nothing. Which I mean, I guess I'm like 5'5" for our studio audience, or not our not our studio audience. They
Close
know I'm
enough.
5'5" because they're standing right here. But our listeners out there from all around the world, yeah. So that's like a very very. short man for America.
Right.
Short man. So it's not a lot of calories, but I got a lot of muscle on me. But even still, like that's ridiculous. And so for me to lose weight, I need to drop to like 1,200 calories or below, which is like stupid. That's just dumb. Like I'm sick of that. It's just dumb. It's really like you feel awful. It does not feel good. No matter how you skin that cat, whether you're eating bacon or whatever, you're not going to feel good doing that under any circumstance. It's just not good.
Right.
So I've kind of bumped it to like 21, 22, even 2,300 calories, which is still like, that's not a lot of calories. It's not like, oh my God, you're eating, like, it's not like I'm bulking or anything like that, but it's like a slowly gradual increase. And so hopefully what it does is it like relieves my glands and all that stuff from the stress. Because there is like, stress put on your body, especially I think even fasting for so long, even though fasting has a lot of good traits. I'm not fasting either. I stopped the intermittent fasting for this. And then, so I'm eating 3 meals a day, but then I think it's going to kind of restore, the hormone balances in my body and then boost them so that it'll actually speed up the metabolism. And the food I'm eating is also extremely quote unquote clean. I don't like to use that term, but it's like good. It's like well, I ate 6 more ounces of chicken and a little bit more avocado or something. It's not like oh, I put 5 scoops of ice cream in this or something. Like it's
Right.
all
Right.
good. It's all I would err on the side, like I like that thing of erring on the side of protein, of just adding more protein to your diet for
Yeah.
sure. It's getting more calories in, and you might be surprised if you went to like super high protein levels of what it would do, even though the calories are you know very high, especially animal protein and what results you might get. So I think that would, like, if when I go to kind of cut from here, to reduce from here after it's been quote unquote elevated, I'll probably substitute out a lot of the fat for protein and maybe maintain the calories and see what that does from it. Um, and these are all like really old techniques they did in like the 60s and 70s in bodybuilding too. These aren't like, these actually is, it's like really nothing new.
Right. Right.
Or like it's not really groundbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think for me, it's obviously I'm going on vacation. Actually, already today, I've relaxed my usual standards. It was the last day of school for the kids. They all wanted sushi. I went out and got sushi rolls, got some for myself because I'll be on vacation starting tomorrow, right? So
Nice,
I've already
nice.
hit, like, my goals now are literally lose another 2 or 3 pounds, right? That's how
Mm-hmm.
that's how tiny my goals are because I've already progressed. Like, my next goal is basically to officially leave. Now, look, I think BMI is BS or whatever, but it just so happens I'm about 6 pounds away from officially leaving the obese BMI category,
Uh-huh.
which I just never believed was possible. Like for like most of my adult life, that I could achieve that. And simply be considered overweight, right? That it's unfortunately it's not like you go from obese to like normal. It's like now you're in this overweight category. But in terms of like health consequences, there's like like just simply being overweight in BMI, there's like not nearly the sort of health consequences in the data. And I'm about 6 pounds away from that, so I think that'll be. But I don't.
Nice.
It's fine if I slow jam that. So yeah, I'll be on vacation next 4 or 5 days. What I am going to try to do though, and what I've been working on is, when I started this, one of the things I would do when I would cheat is I would cheat, dude. When I would have a cheat day, it would just be like, I want you to line up a field of Reese's peanut butter cups, and I'm going to try to eat through the field and I would end up at like double plus, like whatever my daily calorie average would be. I would just eat like double that on a cheat day or whatever. And look, actually, a lot of people do cyclic keto diets, and there's actually kind of a place for that kind of ridiculous hedonism, actually. But like,
uh-huh.
for me, over time, I mean, that's kind of what was necessary to survive at first, right? Because the trauma of like, I'm not going to eat carbs for like huge long stretches of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So allowing yourself those massive cheats or whatever. But I've been doing this for 3 years now, or going to be
Mm-hmm.
approaching, I guess, 3 years or something. It's time to, it's time to like find a way to like yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't, I only really like to have true cheat days, like I just mentioned, about once a month at this point, where I'm just like no holds barred. I'm going to eat anything I want, and I'm not going to care about anything.
Hmm.
What I've been trying to do is learn to be like, yeah, I can just have one meal that's bad. And if that's
Hmm.
all that it is, guess what? I probably don't even cross 150 carbs that day. And it's fine. It's like, trying to be a little bit more balanced instead of this. I have to be perfect for like 6 weeks so I can have one day of absolute insanity. How about I could be perfect for a couple of weeks and have like maybe one meal that's a little off. So I think I've been doing better at that. And even on
Yeah.
this vacation, now it is a vacation, so I do expect that I'll have like a fairly healthy calorie surplus by the end of this. But like, even then, it's like I'm gonna try to kind of buffer myself in this way, and this is more. I really like Dr. Ted Nyman's stuff, by the way. That's why I keep bringing him up. I
Hmm.
think he's just a
I'll look
really
that up. It's Dr. Ted Diamond
Nyman, which is and
or Ted
Nyman with an N. It's
Diamond.
Naiman. I might be pronouncing that last name. It might be Naaman, I
Oh,
guess.
he's up here in Issaquah near me. I
Yeah, I was
just
gonna say,
visited him
yeah,
right now.
he's in Seattle.
Son of a
Yeah,
gun, Virginia
yeah.
Mason. Yeah.
He is really smart guy. I think really greatly insightful in terms of his kind of contributions
Hmm.
to the field or whatever. But what he talks about is just in general, like, and I've been told all my life it's really bad to eat late at night. It's really bad to eat in the evening. Horrible. You should eat early in the day. But actually,
Hmm.
in one of the podcasts I was listening to him talk about, I was like, well, actually, the insulin sensitivity that everyone's always talking about, which is why people say it's better to eat early in the day. He says that's at the fat cell level. That's your fat cells that are more sensitive insulin wise in the morning. So it
Hmm.
kind of doesn't matter that much. Where it's your muscles that are more insulin sensitive in the evening. So it's better to eat more in the evening. And honestly, that's always worked better for me anyway. So what I'm going to try to do in this vacation is I'm still going to eat anything I want, but I'm going to try real hard to not necessarily intermittently fast during the day, but eat very little during the day. Like I'm not going to be
Hmm.
like I'm sure my parents, because my parents will be there. They'll probably buy donuts or pastries and crap like that. I'm going to try my best to not eat that crap in the morning, and if we go out to lunch or whatever, I'll just have soup or something. And then because what ends up happening, I notice when I'm doing vacation eating, is like I'll just be like just the whole day, just like Pac-Man the whole day, and then I'll end up just feeling awful by the end of the day, right? Whereas, like, when I'm even at home and I manage to not eat much during the day, again, I'm not necessarily talking about intermittently fasting. If I have like a small meal, that's okay. But if I'm
Hmm.
saving like 2/3 of my calories for the evening, I don't have that awful feeling of like, man, I just bloated myself out. And so I'm going to try, and that'll be a way to sort of limit the damage of being on vacation a little bit. Like I'm not going to be
Hmm.
trying to go low carb or anything, but even our drive, and we'll be driving to Tennessee tomorrow. I'm going to be like, look, when we stop for lunch, I'm either I'm just going to have a beverage or something really small because I want to save the bulk of my calories to the until the end of the day. It's going to be kind of a strategy I try, but it's vacation. If it doesn't work out, whatever, right? Like it'll be fine. Um, so anyway, those are just kind of my thoughts. But it's been going well though. I mean, it's been I can't. I've had here's a funny thing. Obviously, my whole life I've been just fat person. And I did lose a bunch of weight when I was again. Go listen to that low carb podcast we did that we talked about all about that history. I'm now getting to the point where I'm getting people like on Facebook or whatever contacting me, being obviously people I know that are within my circle of friends or whatever
Hmm.
and family, being like, hey, you've been really successful. Do you have any tips? I have never been that person in my life that someone reaches out to. Like that
Hmm.
has never happened before until now. And I find that actually really cool. And because I always feel like with all this stuff, if I can do it, anyone can. And what I always tell them is like, find one of the Atkins books. Just they're out there as free PDFs because there's so much misinformation and BS and
Uh-huh.
and confusing stuff on diet. That like just start there because it's I don't really follow that anymore now. I mean, I still eat low carb, but I'm not doing this strict like the way Dr. Atkins had it, you do an induction phase and you add things. No, I just kind of have my groove now. But when you're just starting, you need something to guide you, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I hope that you find success in increasing your metabolism, and then we can have a show where we talk about how you can now eat 2,500 calories and
Yeah, I can eat 2,500 calories.
yeah.
We were supposed to talk about. Do we have time to talk about biohacking? Biohacking is like a whole thing. I mean, that's sort of like the loose. I guess this kind of plays into biohacking because you're really hacking your metabolism. I mean, what we want to hack here is the metabolism.
So explain, and that's kind of why I was dancing around this because
Yeah.
this is really your oeuvre, I suppose. Tell us what biohacking is for the first thing.
Better living through chemistry it's legal, I guess.
Okay.
or it could be on the gray area of legal, I suppose, depending on what the laws or particular laws are. But,
so what kind of stuff were we talking about here? Stuff I can buy at the local GNC store?
Sure, you could get some of it there. Yeah, you could get some of it.
Some of it there. Uh-oh.
I mean, you can get everything on Amazon. I think that's pretty safe. I don't go in for any like the crazy stuff that you could do, like some I don't like microdose on shrooms or anything like that. But there's like a lot of like nootrope. I mean, well, basically, whatever the formula I've applied to hack this metabolism thing, I've done to try to. It's all sort of through biohacking and supplements that aid in that as well. But it's kind of getting like different, chemical compounds to try to aid to whatever your goal may be. Try to hack your. It's like augmenting your normal biochemistry for the better with the minimal amount of side effect, if that makes sense. I think that's what it is. It's fascinating to me because it makes you a better person.
Okay, so
sort of just like from not from like a moral standpoint,
right.
but just from the physical composition of your body.
Okay, so let's say you're just the average Joe, right? You go to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
you eat some kind of decent diet, you're doing it all right. Is there one thing, like you could say, add this component, and you'll get like a cool result? Like you're missing this, add this thing, and boy, look out.
More protein. That's kind of the biggest thing. Like protein really helps a lot. Like I think a lot of people misunderstand. Like when you're like, oh, can't gain any weight. Like if you're like super skinny, which is not my problem at all. Like I can gain muscle like very easily.
Right.
But if there's like one thing that you can't do, it's like you really underestimate how much protein you really need to eat, and or how much. Yeah, like it's a lot, right? It's not like even I would say like. Yeah, I mean, you got to eat a lot of it. I think that would be the biggest thing. But there's all sorts of stuff you could do to like tinker with things, and that's what I enjoy doing. It's just tinkering with stuff and seeing does this actually do what it says? Is this actually, are these Amazon reviews real? Is this supplement really that great?
So what's a supplement that has absolutely done it? That's been like, yes, this works. This is awesome.
I would take DHEA for sure if you're over 30, whether you're man or woman. That would aid in a lot of different things, and that's a hormone precursor, and it'll balance your hormones. And obviously, like men and women have very different hormones, right? But like if you're a woman, like my aunt who's like in her 70s takes it as well, and I take it, and I'm taking it to boost my testosterone, which like. Previously at a previous when we worked together or whatever, I boosted my metabolism to like over 1,000 just taking supplements on stuff, which were all legal. Those were all legal supplements, by the way. I don't know what it's at now, but I'm taking the same stuff, so I should probably get it tested to see what it's at. I was taking a lot of orchic glandulars, which that's pig testicles for you kids out there, which I'm thinking about trying that again, which that's sort of another like testosterone booster. But I would say that one is like a really good one. You should try that for sure. And then you should also stack that with DIM, which what is it? The technical name of that is diidolylmethane. You should probably learn to pronounce it before you take it. As a good thing. But this is basically in all cruciferous vegetables. This is like the good thing. That's why they tell you should eat all these cruciferous vegetables. It's like the good metabolite that's in that everyone unanimously across the board says you should eat those things like cabbage and broccoli and any big leafy green or cruciferous vegetable has this in it, but it will not have it in as pure and as large of a form as you could take it in a pill. Now, I'm not saying don't eat your vegetables or just take this pill, but the stack of those two, and this will kind of balance the estrogen out of your body, and so you won't get any of those negative estrogen effects. But I would take those two as like my biggest, like, okay, these actually do something. It's not instead of like all these things of you take this thing, it works great. Like these actually do something, and they're quite good.
So DHEA, and of course I should say, I don't know if I have to, I don't know what the legalities of this kind of stuff is, but I'll just say, yes, we're not doctors. Don't take our advice.
We're not doctors by any means, and do not, I guess I guess I shouldn't tell you to take these, right? Probably not.
Well, no, what you're doing is you're conveying your personal experiences. I just ask, hey, you're in your personal experience.
I'm not telling anyone to do this,
right?
But I'm saying that these supplements actually do something instead of other supplements that don't do anything.
Right.
These actually do something. I'd probably also take creatine as well. Creatine actually has an effect,
and that's pretty standard. That one I had heard of, and
that's harmless. Yeah, that's absolutely harmless. There's nothing wrong with that. And these other ones are pretty harmless too. Now, obviously, if you do take DHEA, you can't probably participate in the Olympics because I think it is a banned substance, but it's not like you're not going to get like roid rage, and you're not going to get any of the negative. It's not like at all like a steroid or anything like
that. Right. I think this would be a good point to wind it down here. So thank you, Kip, for sharing that. It's really interesting. Actually, I was looking at DHEA. I was kind of nodding my head at some of the web pages that were coming up.
What comes up on that? Really?
Oh, just nothing that is particularly alarming. It's there's like a WebMD article that says, well, it does these things, but of course, we gotta be careful because we don't know the long term, but it does.
Long term, we're all on this rock just for a short period of time.
But no, it seems interesting, and it makes sense why it would be, something that, especially as you approach middle age, would be a good idea to consider possibly. But anyway, so. All right, so thank you, listeners, for checking this out. Hopefully, this was an enjoyable sort of casual cast. Sorry about this temporary computer I'm using in the sounds that it's making in the podcast. I hate that. But if you're able to stomach that and you're still with us anyway, remember to like us, to give us good reviews on iTunes, do all that stuff. Help us to get more listeners because we are broadening the scope of the show a little bit. That's why we call it the Drawing Room now. As we talk about more stuff than just video, although video is the home base, the video games home base, what we talk about. So yeah, like us, give us good reviews. Find me Rojo Games on Twitter. Find me Rojo Games 80 on Instagram. You can find me in those places. And Kip, you are Nervous Pixels on Twitter, although you are not a prolific Twitter user.
I'm not going to tweet you. I'm not going to tweet you back. Can you tweet somebody back?
Yes, you can. Yes, that shows you how yes, he has an account, and that's pretty much what it is.
Hit me up on Insta. Hit me up. No, I don't know what I don't know this jargon these kids do these days. I'm on Twitter if you want to follow me. I started following people, but it got confusing, and then okay.
All right, so thank you for checking out the Drawing Room this time. We will talk at you later.
Adios.